Traded misplaced fear among voters. That was stated by our next presenter, Sister Andrea James, founder, executive director, Justice is Healing, a radical idea to some people that really shouldn't be radical. She's going to talk to us about the politics and policies of mass incarceration.
Wow, I'm not quite sure whose idea this was for me to follow Dr. Ron Daniels, but okay. Again, we are very grateful to IBW for the support and giving us this platform. We are formerly incarcerated women. We speak from the voice of formerly incarcerated women. Our organization, Families for Justice is Healing, was started in the Danbury Federal Prison for Women in the prison yard. And I brought that organization out with me when I was released. We named that organization Families for Justice Healing because our Native sisters, there were quite a few of our Native sisters in federal prisons. And some of the Native sisters who came in together and were all leaving together from just over, sorry, can you hear me?
Thank you, sister.
Just over,
Lord, Mike. Yeah, Lord. Yeah.
thank you. Sorry, I'll try. Oh, good. Is that better? A little better?
Sit a little closer.
That were just over the border in Canada, presented me with a book. I had the privilege, after some time of being in the prison, to finally be able to go into the classroom and teach GED, where I taught English, science, and English as a second language to my sisters who were incarcerated with me. And some of the Native women that had been in my class presented me with a book when they were leaving, and the book was called Justice as Healing. And the book teaches us the importance of Native communities and how we used to begin the process of justice, which was a circle in our communities, with our community members, with our families, with our children, with the people we have harmed. All of us in the room together in a circle talking about healing, first reminding the person who has caused harm how wonderful and amazing and beautiful and who they belong to and who loves them and where they came from. And so that was very important. And so we decided in this women's federal prison in Danbury, Connecticut, that was going to be the name of our organization because we wanted to heal our people too. And we wanted to use our voices to do that. So I come from Roxbury, Massachusetts, and my children are the 4th generation to grow up in our home in Roxbury, Massachusetts, and I am very proud of that. My grandmother, Corinne Alleen, broke the color barrier. She was the first black nurse at Boston City Hospital. I come from a family where my parents are researchers and educators and researchers of people of African diaspora, and they travel all over the world and they collect that research and they share it with people so that we can understand exactly what Dr. Ron Daniels was teaching us about our culture and how very important that is. I come from a family where my aunt, Dr. Dolores Alleen, was the first black pediatrician, lead pediatrician for Los Angeles County. I'm very proud of that. She retired, and the year she retired, her son was sent to San Quentin prison, where he still is serving a 25 to life sentence, and she started an organization after she retired as the first black lead pediatrician of LA County to start an organization called Save Our Sons, which is still in Los Angeles. I just came from visiting that side of the country, Save Our Sons and Homeboy Industries and CURB, Californians for United for Responsible Budget, and organizing and sitting in a room very similar to this over a number of days talking to them. And my uncle, Reginald Alleen, was one of the first black labor lawyers, taught UCLA School of Law for 25 years, and was one of the first black lawyers to negotiate contracts, labor contracts for professional sports teams. So I come from a long history of people. We were raised in our family and taught to heal our people, to love our people, and to continue the work that Dr. Ron Daniels has been doing and that he is teaching us about, to remember where we come from. So for me, I have been working in the criminal justice system for at least 25 years of my adult life. Pretty much all of my adult life I've been working in the criminal justice system, and I was a practicing criminal defense lawyer for many, many years in Roxbury, Massachusetts. Opened my office after I left the Public Defender Agency, where I cut my teeth, helped start the Youth Advocacy Project, which is now a national model for teaching other lawyers how to represent children who are court involved. I moved on and went into private practice and had criminal defense practice and a legal clinic in my law office, and then began practicing real estate conveyance law. And eventually, as a result of my real estate conveyance practice, wound up serving a 2-year sentence in federal prison. And that was extraordinarily painful and traumatic for me, for my family, for my children. I stood in the parking lot at the Danbury Women's Prison and left my 5-month-old son and my 12-year-old baby girl in the parking lot with my parents and my husband. And I walked into this prison, and I had pretty much, over the years that I had practiced criminal defense law, I had pretty much been in quite a few prisons. Certainly just about every single prison. I can't think of one prison in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that I hadn't been in as a defense attorney. But I had also been in a number of prisons, even way back prior, when our oldest daughter, who is 30 years old, was a baby girl. She was 6 years old when my husband was sent to the federal penitentiaries and served a 10-year mandatory minimum drug sentence. So that was 24 years ago. And so I knew firsthand already what that was like, to drive up and down highways looking and trying to find my husband so that my 6-year-old daughter could remember who her father was. And the federal system takes you all over the place. So my experience with this issue that I'm going to talk to you about tonight, and I know it's been a long day. It's been a long day for me. It's been a long years for me. I will never stop talking about this issue. When I walked out of that prison in Danbury, the women came out of the prison and lined behind the fence up on the hill. And they were waving towels and T-shirts, and they told me, "Don't forget us. Do not forget us. Tell our story." And I made a promise to my sisters that I would not forget them, because even in the 25 years that I have worked within the criminal justice system, I thought that I knew everything anybody could know about the injustices, the system, how it works, until I walked into the Danbury Federal Prison for Women and experienced what I experienced over the 2 years that I was incarcerated. And I have to tell you, it was like a kick in the stomach from the very first day that I walked into that prison and I looked out onto a sea of black women. It was heartbreaking. And I was there for 2 years. These women had been there for 7 years before I got there, and were going to be there for another 7 years after I left. Women like Phyllis Hardy, who have been in prison for 22 years. She is 70 years old. 22 years she's been in the Danbury Federal Prison for Women. She's very sick. We are working very hard to bring her home. And she now was just shipped. She fits all the criteria that she could come home. But instead of sending her home, the feds sent her to Carswell, to the medical facility, instead of letting her, after 22 years of a 30-year drug sentence, not murder, not rape, not a violent offense where you just annihilated a whole neighborhood of people. She went to prison for drugs. So these are the reasons why we did that, because when I walked into that prison, as traumatic as it was for me to have gone through the experience that I went through and to realize that I was now an incarcerated person, the stories of these women just overwhelmed me. And the fact that I knew that they were going to be there far and long after I left out the door, I made a commitment that I would use, if it took the rest of my life, which it just might do, and I talk about this every single day, from city to city, from coast to coast. I will never, ever, ever stop talking about it. And I don't talk about it. I mean, every now and then, you know, for entertainment, I'm invited out to a white organization and they have an evening of talk. And I go, okay? And I charge them money so that I could, you know, figure out how to get back to my community, okay? I find my community, and I talk to my community because I know there is a disconnect. There is a disconnect, a huge disconnect that we have got to stop bridging the gap with. And the black middle class has closed its eyes to this problem. The black church has closed its eyes to this problem. And it is just, it's wrong. It's unconscionable. It's immoral what we are allowing to happen in this country. And we all pretty much are aware of the numbers. 40 years ago, in 1972, we had 300,000 people in prison. Today, there are 2.3 million. The United States has the highest incarceration rate. This is all stuff that everybody at this table knows. You put every single country in the world together and all of their incarcerated population, and we incarcerate more people than the entire rest of the countries in the world. 7 million people are on probation and parole. I'm one of them. This has created a despair and hopelessness in black communities and communities of color. 1 out of 3 black men is in jail, in prison, or on probation or parole. The collateral post-incarceration penalties, which we never think about. We don't talk about this. Unless you're sitting in a room like this, unless you're talking to Brother Charles Thornton, like I try and do don't try and let a week go by without connecting with my brothers and sisters who I know are doing this work in the streets. Because we have to continue to remind ourselves what we have to fight for. The collateral post-incarceration penalties are just as harsh and unforgiving as the sentences, further blocking our most vulnerable from housing, food, jobs, and education. One of the most destructive collateral penalties we heard Brother Daniel speaking of tonight is voter disenfranchisement. In Alabama, for instance, 34% of black men have lost their right to vote. And let me, Sister Nakichi, my co-counsel, the Voting Rights Act is not a permanent document.
Absolutely not.
We have to vote that in every 26 years. We're not going to have enough of us to make sure that happens if we don't sit up and pay attention. If we don't think this is impacting us yet. If we still have folks that we talk to that think that this doesn't impact us yet, just share that fact with them. I was in Washington, D.C. at a round table at Bread for the World. Brother Charles was there, and our sister LaShawna Etheridge was there as well. LaShawna was a young sister, a young mother of 2 babies, and they sent her to federal prison. That was 20 years ago. 18 years that young woman sat in the same prison I was in Danbury, Connecticut. And she's home now, and Brother Charles made sure she had a job, and she's doing a phenomenal job now running as a staff assistant and organizing formerly incarcerated women and returning citizens with the WIRE program. But she reminded us that the police tactics that have been used historically, I mean, we know about COINTELPRO, and some of us, you know, we know about these things that we know are fact, as Dr. Daniels told us. They're not, you know, just figments of our imagination. These were nefarious and calculated and intentional things that were done. But what we don't think about, that continues today even, are these major sweeps that came through our communities that literally swept out thousands of our members of our community overnight, literally. And they would do it city to city to city. And LaShawna reminded me of that, Brother Charles, Operation Clean Sweep. 53,000 members of our communities overnight swept into prisons. So our system of concentrated mass incarceration has created a second generation of children in our country that are struggling to raise themselves as they experience the trusted adults in their lives caught in a continuous cycle of chronic poverty and incarceration. These are the same children caught in the epidemic of gun violence. This gun violence is not a silo issue. It's a symptom of a far greater problem. I had the privilege, the honor of coming and meeting with a group of sisters as the guest of Dr. Johnson Spite in Philadelphia last week. And I brought my parents with me because my mom and dad are 80 and 84. And they marched in the original march. And they came to me to Washington, D.C. when I first met Roz and Dr. Daniels. And so they roll out with me. They roll out with me all the time. And they came, and my mom is still talking about that experience that we had with Mothers in Charge, and the sisters, the women that came out to meet with us and to hear about the work that we're trying to do collectively. So thank you very much for that opportunity. But as a country, we have criminalized poverty.
Right.
Families are usually the safety net for our young generation caught in this cycle of poverty and incarceration. And still again, the collateral penalties of a felony conviction remove even the safety net of the support of the family. I started out telling you that my children are the 4th generation to live in our home in Roxbury, Massachusetts. That's what we do as a people. That's what we have always done. And the families have been that very last safety net. When all else fails, you're going to always have your family as that safety net. But now, even now, that's not happening. Recently, one of our members came to me after being in court with her son all day. She's our member because she's a formerly incarcerated woman herself. Those are our members. And she said that her son received a very common sentence that many of our young men and women in the Commonwealth are receiving now. It's a 5 and 5. It's a split sentence. You do 5 years in, and you got to do 5 years when you come out. But now, even before he goes in, she had to prove that she had removed her son from her lease. Probation required that before he even went in, it was part of the disposition by the judge that she demonstrate that when she came for her son to take his plea, that she demonstrate that she had removed her son from her lease. So forever in time, poor families have lived together, sharing the load of caring for the family through hard times, and now many families find themselves no longer able to live with one another. This is significant when we see the reports that there's been an 800% increase in incarceration of black women in the United States. And Dr. Daniels, you were unapologetic that we stand for black people. And our organization is unapologetic about standing for black people. But we stand for black women, unapologetically.
Right.
And this is significant when we think about these numbers. 800% increase of black women of incarceration. And it's something that I witnessed during my own incarceration. When I walked into that prison, I cannot tell you, and I've been in so many prisons, but in a different place, kind of like in the attorney's room, you know, in the special area of the visitor room. But I walked in as an incarcerated woman, and it was just unbelievable. 80% of incarcerated women were the primary caregivers prior to their incarceration. 80% of incarcerated women were the primary caregivers prior to their incarceration. Now this will make all the sense. 68% of children within the juvenile system have one or both parents in prison. Okay? Absolutely. 80% of incarcerated women were the primary caregivers prior to their incarceration. So their children lived with their mothers prior to their incarceration. And 68, I don't care where you are, what state you're in, what city you're in, county, municipal, state, 68% of the children that make up the juvenile system in this country, and I'm sure the number has to be higher, have one or both parents in prison. The rise in incarceration of women has been a major destabilizer of our families and communities. Mothers have been the connected thread in the fabric of our communities, and our children have suffered in their absence. The Federal Bureau of Prisons can ship a person anywhere, and they do. Your case could have originated in Dallas or El Paso or Chicago or LA, where your children remain, but you find yourself serving, on average, a 10-year mandatory sentence in some place like Danbury, Connecticut. Thousands and thousands of miles away from your children. Many of the women I was incarcerated with had not seen their children for 5 and 6 years, as their families could not afford the expense of travel to faraway prisons. And many who could not gain access and entry into the prison because of their own convictions, their own criminal records, precluded them. The prison would not let them come into the prison, not even to bring the children of these women. There were also multiple generations of the same families in prison at the same time, all sentenced on the same drug case, sisters and mothers and even grandmothers doing time together, while their husbands and brothers and fathers and sons were in federal prisons someplace else. In some families, all the trusted adults of the children had been incarcerated in faraway federal prisons, and the children are lost to the system and lost to the streets. We had woman after woman after woman who would receive the news that their child had been gunned down in a street in a city somewhere, and this woman was in a prison and couldn't get out. And I don't know any greater retribution than the loss of a child. What else do you have to give of yourself?
Right.
Why wouldn't they open the door and let that woman go home to help and save the lives of the rest of her children? But not only that, the Federal Bureau of Prisons has a policy that if they determine that that child's death was gang-related, you're not going. Nancy Flores' 17-year-old son was shot multiple times with a semi-automatic weapon and killed while she was in Danbury, and she was not allowed to attend his funeral. So you can imagine what that must be like. So where the family was once a safety net, that's been removed. If you enter any women's prison anywhere, there is a heaviness that hangs in the air. It's the heaviness of the pain of the women dealing with their incarceration while carrying the weight of worry about their children. Many of those children struggling to survive, and some now dying on the streets from gun violence while their mothers are warehoused in prisons. In any women's jail or prison, the profiles are very similar. Many of the women have chronic health problems, hepatitis C, asthma, STDs, and gynecological problems. 85% have a mental health diagnosis. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, bipolar disorder, and eating disorders. 87% are addicted to drugs, and 57% are addicted to alcohol. And I want to tell you something. When I came home from prison, I had every resource that I could need. I came from a family with resources. I had a husband with resources. I still had all of the things that I left with intact. My children had been well taken care of. I had food to eat and roofs over my head. And I have to tell you, it took me a year to get off the couch. I could not even articulate a complete sentence when I left the federal prison for women at Danbury, Connecticut. Prison is exhausting. Emotionally, physically, anything you can think of, it is exhausting. And imagine, the majority of the women that I left there, when they come out, aren't going to have anywhere near the resources that I had when I came home. Imagine going through that. Imagine. and you don't have the opportunity. You come out with nothing. You got to find your children. You don't have a place to live. You don't have a change of clothes. You're coming out in the gray sweatsuit that you had, that Danbury sent you out the door with. You don't have any money. You have a criminal record. You've been in prison for 10 years. You don't know how to find a job, where to look for a job. You don't know anything. And you are what people never think about, are completely exhausted. And nobody cares to give you that space to begin to heal from the experience. Never mind the experience that brought you to prison, that you don't get a chance to heal from while you're there. But on top of that now, you have to find a way to heal from the experience of being in prison. Whew. I'm telling you. So, in our country, jails, state prisons, thousands of women are on a revolving door of incarceration. Women in this country who are incarcerated are mostly incarcerated because they are victim offenders. They are dealing with this series of events in their lives that leads them to prison, okay? And these charges, for instance, one of the things that we focus on at Families for Justice is Healing, the charges that women are sitting warehoused, separated from their children, separated from any healing resources from their communities and their social networks, the charges that they keep cycling in and out of these jails and prisons for are things like prostitution. Prostitution. We've made prostitution a crime and the woman the criminal. Shoplifting. Shoplifting. Public drunkenness. Drug use and possession. And the other big problem, violations of parole and probation. A constant cycle of incarceration. For the most part, the profiles of incarcerated women demonstrate that their lives are constrained by economic policies, violent relationships, irrational drug laws, and gendered and racial inequalities. The solutions to these problems are not to be found in a prison. What we are finding at Families for Justice is Healing is that the problems are clearly defined, and there is anecdotal and empirical evidence to support evidence-based practices. We're a criminal justice reform organization. We advocate for community wellness alternatives to incarceration, and we focus on women. Our aim is to, while we're working on the big tent issues of repealing mandatory minimums and dismantling the system of mass incarceration, we're coming through the back door, filling the missing seat as formerly incarcerated women to use our voices to shape legislation and policy. As the founder and executive director, my job is to raise the level of awareness of the increase in incarceration of women and the impact on our children and communities, and also to gather and share information about criminal justice reform models that are working to reduce prison populations and reinvest in communities. And I do this from a culmination of my experiences as a criminal defense attorney, a formerly incarcerated woman who knows firsthand the pain of separation from her children, as a wife of a man who served a federal 10-year drug sentence. I know this issue up close and personal. I have skin in this game. And upon my release from prison, I left many women behind who we are working to bring home because we know that they do not need to be warehoused in prison. There are solutions that are good, effective, restorative, and healing. And I'm just going to share this last piece with you because it's so important. We're now armed. I want you to think about this. Dr. Daniels, I think, I wrote down everything he said when he was talking about this because I always find myself trying to represent this issue. And it's very different than the folks who are trying to legalize drugs because they want to smoke some weed. You are absolutely right, Dr. Daniels. We're armed now with the truth about drug use and addiction. Thanks to Dr. Gabor Mate, for instance. If you haven't read his book, please read it, The Realm of the Hungry Ghosts. And scientists like Dr. Carl Hart, brother I met in Denver recently, his book, High Price. We know that 30 million people in this country use drugs recreationally, from Wall Street to our college campuses, military bases, suburban living rooms, without falling off that cliff of addiction. We know that the majority of these drug users and sellers are white. They are white, even for crack, even for heroin. The majority of drug users for every single drug on the planet that exists are white people.
Tell it.
90% of those incarcerated for drugs are black people. And we know that the war on drugs was a nefarious plot with an intended scheme of fear and race politics. And along with the anecdotal and empirical evidence related to mass incarceration, we now also have technology to help us clearly define where the repairs could begin. I was recently invited to present our work at the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute at Harvard University. We were among a small group of grassroots organizations that do our work deep up in the cut, where nobody comes, with no money sent. Somehow we get it done. I have a good graces of BWI, IBW, I'm always saying it backwards. But you know, we were invited. Finally, we were invited to come to this great place, the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute, and so that they could hear about what help we needed. And while we were there, we received a presentation from a gentleman named Eric Kadora. Now, Eric Kadora was from the Spatial Information Design Lab and the Justice Mapping Center. And I gotta tell you, okay, they created maps of what they named $1 million blocks. The maps show that a disproportionate number of the more than 2 million people locked up in jails and prisons come from a very few neighborhoods within the country's largest cities. These areas became known as $1 million blocks because in those areas, states are spending in excess of $1 million a year to incarcerate residents of a single city block. Not a whole block, not the whole avenue, a single city block in excess of $1 million. These maps demonstrate, and we saw these maps and it was just like another kick in the stomach. These maps demonstrate down to the zip code, the areas within major cities where there is concentrated incarceration. So let's just start there. And Lynn, let's bring our framework covering from no entry to re-entry into these communities block by block. There are answers. The question now is, do we have the moral and political fortitude to stand and demand they be implemented? I'm almost done. Some recent changes have occurred on the federal level towards sentencing reform, and most recently the president has spoken out about the need to change our sentencing laws. A few weeks ago, he commuted the sentences of 8 individuals serving non-violent drug offenses. And guess what? Our president said 8 is not enough. And we tend to agree. Unfortunately, the changes are being made, but they are still handing out very long, very unjust, draconian sentences. We were just joined at the meeting where we were with Brother Charles at Bread for the World in D.C. last week. The family of Corinne Seals, a 22-year-old young woman. They drove from Lancaster, Pennsylvania to be at that meeting, that organizing meeting for our rally. And with them, 3 aunts, the mother of Corinne Seals, of this 22-year-old graduate of a historically black college, and her baby girl Nyla, came to this meeting because they wanted people to understand the reality of this. So things are changing, but they haven't changed because Corinne Seals just received a 150-month sentence. She drove a rental car 4 times to help her brother-in-law to go and pick up drugs that he was purchasing to sell. She refused to cooperate with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and she was brought into the full conspiracy and given the full amount of all the drugs in the conspiracy. She just started, she's in Hazleton, West Virginia, in the federal women's prison, and she has just started a 150-month sentence. Her baby girl, 2-year-old Nyla, came to tell us all that she wants to bring her mother home. And we want to help her to bring her mother home. So I don't want us to, yes, the changes are happening, but at the same time, they are still giving our people these sentences. And unfortunately, the changes that are currently happening within the Obama administration really aren't going to impact all of those people that are there now, that have already been sentenced. Hopefully, Nikichi gave me a huge ray of hope when she told me that there is a systemic push for clemency that is going on, and we're coming to Nikichi's Justice Roundtable to hear about that, because from the inside, we're still on the inside encouraging our women to file their for commutation, and we need to learn how do we get that done for them. And finally, I'm ending here. Dr. Ron Daniels, he said it, that we're here because we've come together to have each other's back.
That's right.
And we're asking you to have our back. We are formerly incarcerated women. We have been organizing an event called the Free Her Rally for almost 2 years now. And it's been painful. It has not been easy. We have no money. We are out on faith. For real. And somehow we have managed to wind up in places like this in front of folks like you. And we ask you to have our back. We're coming. We are coming. We are organizing 200 buses. Most of them are buses of family members whose daughters or mothers or sisters or grandmothers are locked in the federal prison system. We are coming as formerly incarcerated women and supporters, all of you who say that you stand against mass incarceration. We are asking you to come. Please come and join us. Stand with us. Have our back. Formerly incarcerated women, 200 buses, 10,000 women coming to the Washington Mall on June 21st. How did we figure that number out? We said, okay, how many buses, how many seats in a bus? And we said, okay, there's 47 seats in a bus. Okay, so this is how many buses we need to fill. And we don't get, so we're asking people, get 47 other people to come with you, even if it isn't by a bus. If you gotta get on the subway, if you gotta get on a train, if y'all have to get on minivans like we came to the college in, if you gotta carpool, we got people, we have done all kinds, the families have done amazing things to, they've had bake sales and church sales, and they've asked their churches to help them, and quite honestly, a lot of the response from the black community, from the more traditional groups have been, what does this have to do with us? We have not, if I'm telling you, I'm going to be heartbroken if there's a bunch of white women with you know, flowers in their hair standing on the Washington Mall on June 21st. I love them and I want them there, and we need their support. This is all us, you know, we need it all. But that's the response that we've received, particularly from the black church. We just can't understand it. So we're down to the wire now. Okay, we don't have a whole lot of time just to be kumbayaing with folks and talking about this is a good idea.
Right.
We and Brother Charles came with me because it was serious. We couldn't even get the National Park Service to take us seriously. I said, okay, I'm gonna have a whole bunch of women with no place to go. And Brother Charles went with me. We sat down and had a meeting for an hour and a half with the National Park Service. We started out with a corner on the street corner somewhere and wound up with the Sylvan Theater. The Sylvan Theater is the outdoor amphitheater on the Washington Mall. We are coming, and we're asking you to make the commitment. As an individual, as an organization, put together a group of 47 people and bring them, get them, help them to get there, tell them to go. There's information about this. Please join us on the 20th, the day before. The June 21st is a Saturday. It's a good old-fashioned get on the bus. We've got all kinds of buses coming from New York, from New Jersey, from Philadelphia, from Boston, from Denver. We are simulcasting the rally in Denver. Denver, it was going to cost them $20,000 to bring one bus. So instead of doing that, they are now holding a rally at the same time as our rally, a Free Her rally from Denver that we are going to bring up on a screen in Washington, D.C. with our brothers and sisters in Denver. So we're very excited about that. Just so that you're clear, the Free Her rally, the purpose of it, and we're unapologetic, and I will end here. I know it's been a long night. I just want to make sure that I'm clear about why we're coming. We're coming for quite a few reasons. We're coming, Larissa Alexander, we're spotlighting Marissa's case. They've asked us, and of course, we were asking them to come anyway. But a month after our rally is Marissa's, she goes back to court. And they are now trying to give her 60 years. So they have asked us, they said, do you think you could help us get 500 people down to the courthouse a few weeks after your rally? I said, 500? So this is what we're talking about here. There's a number of different groups that have been working on mass incarceration issues, not just for women, but across the board, men, women, and we're not leaving anybody out. We are formerly incarcerated women from the federal system, okay? We're coming and asking that the Free Her rally for commutation for women and men in the federal system, but we're not doing it because we don't care about everybody else. We care about it. We stand for everybody, but the fact of the matter is we have a window of opportunity with a president who has said 8 is not enough. And he has the power to do this for this population. We want to stand for everybody, but we're not going to overlook the people who could benefit and get pushed out the door. That's our goal, to reduce the prison population of black women in this country. That's why we're coming. And we're also coming with all the other issues, voter disenfranchisement and no education. And we're asking them to reallocate the federal subsidies for building prisons, to reallocate just that money. Don't know where the money's coming from? Well, all that federal subsidy you use to build prisons, just take it out of that and reallocate that into community wellness. That's what we're talking about, into programs like the sister was talking about in Pittsburgh. Give them that money and let them see what they can do with it instead of building the prison. So I thank you very much.
This sister incredible. I just love her. Incredible. So, you see this thing about this book? I mean, she just continues to blow my mind. Let me just say this part. I forgot, we end up so many places, but you showed up somewhere a long way from Boston, and you said, we got these t-shirts, we got these books and stuff, and please, help us support what we're doing. But most importantly, we got to sell these so we can get back home. Right. That's how serious they are. They was the place that we got to get there and then sell these things so we can get back. So, that's like, there ain't no game there. That's real. And so we got to be prepared to support this. It's easy for me to remember this. This is my mama's birthday, June 21st.
That's my grandmother's birthday.
All right, see, something magic is happening here. It's coming together. The other thing I want to say real quick, and then Keisha, go to you.
Rick, you may want to say that the books, unfortunately, are somewhere between UPS and the Holiday Inn Express. And hopefully they'll be here tomorrow. Yeah. It's an incredible read.
There's people from Pittsburgh know this. There's a corner, Penn Avenue and East Liberty, in the east part of the city. And ever since Bush the First went into Iraq, from 1 to 2 o'clock, brothers and sisters primarily, and a few other folk that joined, they have been there every Saturday, if it's 10 below zero, whatever, protesting, Black Voices for Peace. And I'm convinced that we need to do something similar across this country. It might only be an hour or whatever. I don't know if it's in front of courthouses or whatever. But in the tradition of the Montgomery bus boycott, the Free South Africa movement, this movement for clemency, this movement to make them do it. Presidents now, that's the lure. They say, if you want me to pass the Voting Rights Act, or the Civil Rights Bill, or to pardon people in prison, make me do it. Well, I say we ought to make Obama do it. And we gotta turn the church around and everybody else that needs to be turned around. And one way to do it, just like the Moral Mondays, if across this country, folks join together and have this singularity of issue, and we take the same tact, and we get out and do the same thing, and people really, I mean, just alone, the 7 million who are burdened with that felony scarlet letter on their forehead, it's 7 million of them alone. You take all their families, you ain't seen nothing. Next year will be the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March. We talked about changing the world. I think some things are coming together. Let's change the world for real. And this sister, I think, is showing us the way, as well as all of y'all around this table and the work that you're doing. We just need to connect these dots and build these networks and speak with that one voice. We said we would be getting out of here. I think the program said about 9:30, so we'll have some time to talk and engage.
The buses leave at
9:30.
Right.
And Geechee, and then we'll go around with people.